we felt a little bad, certainly I did, about leaving the university when I thought very interesting work on artificial intelligence was really on the verge of taking place and symbolically proving programs were correct. Ironically now, it's taken a long time. The rate of progress, which is hard to make numeric, in both those areas has been quite modest. I mean, we haven't gone backwards or anything, but AI has turned out to be a tougher problem, which is fascinating. And now there are some interesting advances, and likewise symbolic type things. There are some now advances. So we thought we'd miss being more at the center of those. Now through at least funding Microsoft research, we get to have some level of involvement in that. One of Paul's ideas was to build a 360 emulator. That was the dominant mainframe of the time, used bit slice architecture to just blow away the pricing on mainframe computing. But we decided that was kind of boring compared to personal computing. A company came along about 5 years later, 2Pi, and did it. They didn't do the software piece right. That's why they failed, because we still think it was a good idea. But we didn't have anything even close to, hey, let's build a computer that we want to use, that we want to have as a tool for our own messing around and communication and creativity. That kind of got at the center of our thinking, even from the early days.
If you ask people across the United States, is the future going to be better than the past? Most say no. My kids will be worse off than I am. They think innovation won't make the world better for them or their children. So who's right? The people who say innovation will create new possibilities and make the world better? Or the people who see a trend toward inequality and a decline in opportunity and don't think innovation will change that? The pessimists are wrong, in my view, but they're not crazy. If innovation is purely market-driven and we don't focus on the big inequities, then we could have amazing advances and inventions that leave the world even more divided. We won't improve public schools. We won't cure malaria. We won't end poverty. We won't develop the innovations poor farmers need to grow food in a changing climate. If our optimism doesn't address the problems that affect so many of our fellow human beings, then our optimism needs more empathy. If empathy channels our optimism, we will see the poverty and the disease and the poor schools. We will answer with our innovations, and we will surprise the pessimists. Over the next generation, you Stanford graduates will lead a new wave of innovation. Which problems will you decide to solve? If your world is wide, you can create the future we all want. If your world is narrow, you may create the future the pessimists fear. I started learning in Soweto that if we're going to make our optimism matter to everyone and empower people everywhere, we have to see the lives of those most in need. If we have optimism without empathy, then it doesn't matter how much we master the secrets of science. We're not really solving problems, we're just working on puzzles. I think most of you have a broader worldview than I had at your age. You can do better at this than I did. If you put your hearts and minds to it, you can surprise the pessimists. We're eager to see it.
The idea that computers were going to be a change agent, I was lucky enough to meet Paul Allen, and early on we brainstormed about this idea of the chip. And the chip changed the rules. I mean, most things don't get a million times better. Not, engine efficiency or, most things have theoretical minimums. Computation is something that we're not even close to the theoretical minimum, yet we've improved so much. So seeing that was going to come, and weirdly, that most people didn't see that was going to come. So, even people at IBM were still thinking in terms of big computers. Now all the software and service-driven companies are worth even more than IBM. When I was growing up, IBM was the monolith, and it was always, okay, are we going to beat them? Are we going to join them? Those bastards. Actually, they were very nice people, but we always thought of them
And they sort of stood for these big computers that only big companies and governments could get the benefit for. So actually we played off of that to have this power to the people, personal computing type thing. Of course, now we're a big company, and somebody can play off of us. The idea that a young person can start a company here is a super nice thing, because although people at first are skeptical, as soon as they realize their normal model of what I knew and what I could do, that I didn't fit that normal model, then they assumed I knew way more than I did, and I could solve all sorts of problems I had no clue how to solve. But it was nice that people were kind of agog that we had built this company and done these things from a young age. So I think the culture of America, that almost the American dream type success story, is a fairly special time, because computers when I was young were super expensive, and my friend Paul Allen and I actually snuck into places at the University of Washington where they had computers that weren't being used at night. And so we were fascinated by what the computer could do, but very few people were getting exposure. We had to go out of our way, and we were lucky that we did it all. And so then when the idea of moving the computer onto a chip that Intel would make, and that would make the computer literally millions of times cheaper than the ones we were using, so both more powerful and available to people on a personal level, then the idea of, okay, it would be very different, the software you needed, the way the industry would work. We were super lucky to be there when that was happening.
So what did your family think? Did they say there's something wrong with this young man, he wants to just do computers?
They knew I was obsessed with computers, that I would skip athletics, that I'd go in overnight, that I'd leave the house sometimes when they prefer I wouldn't go work at night on these things. And so it was kind of considered a little strange. And the big moment was when I said, instead of going to part of my senior year, that I wanted to go work for a company writing software. So they were great about allowing that to be my hobby. You want to have impact, usually delegation's important. Although, individual contributors in terms of inventing a drug or a new approach to things, that's phenomenal. So when Microsoft first got started, I wrote most of the code, and everybody else's code I read and kind of rewrote. And that got us up to 10 people, and then I had to say to myself, okay, we're going to ship code that I didn't edit. And that was hard for me, but I kind of got over that. Then I still said, okay, I'm going to interview everyone, and I'm going to at least look at samples of their code. Well, that got us up to about 40 people. And that was at a point where I had sold way more software than we could write, because everybody was so impressed. And I thought, well, I need to collect enough money to keep hiring all these people. But the demand was so high that we were actually falling behind. That's when I hired Steve. And Steve figured out how to control what promises I made to people, and B, how to hire lots of people, and really good people, and create organizations and teams. So I delegated to Steve that, and he was constantly saying to me, okay, we're going to hire programmers that you've never met. And I'd say, no, we're not. And then he would show me numerically that the constraint wasn't going to work. Then I said, okay, then I would, know all the managers of the people. And so over time, and of course, I could say the quality per person was falling monotonically, according to me. But large problems, if you want to write the most popular office productivity software, that one person absolutely can't do that. You can write pretty code. So everyone has to decide what scale of organization they want to work in. Eventually, my role was very much as a leader and a reviewer of managers, but the top people, and I hired some super experienced people, I would make sure they were pursuing a common vision and they were well coordinated. But in terms of a lot of management stuff, they were way better than I was. Now I had to have the framework to know what mix of skills that we needed, and when they were working well enough together. But a lot of my value added was picking, say, to do graphics user interface, or to do an integrated office type thing, or to go global and not use agents to have Microsoft be present all over the world. And so yeah, picking what you're good at and how you find the other people to fill in those things, that's super important. And most founders aren't able to scale that up and kind of give up the hands-on things that they used to get a lot of pleasure and comfort from.